Hey everybody, Richard Gaming Guy here. Today we're going to do a full demo and review of the Anbernic RG503 handheld video game console. So let's jump into it. Alright, so we're going to take a closer look at the Anbernic RG503. So in terms of the layout of controls here, very close to what they typically do from Anbernic. You're going to have your 4-button configuration here, A, B, X, and Y. Buttons are phenomenal. No binds, no stickiness to them at all, just great action on all of these buttons. Start and select up here. I love having them up here. In past handhelds, sometimes you'll have some spare buttons up here, and your start and select used to be down at the bottom. I always hated that, and I actually would remap the buttons to start and select up at the top, just because if you're resting your hands in this sort of position, which I think is typical for gameplay with a handheld like this, you're going to have your thumb on one hand over the A, B, X, and Y. Other one's going to be either on D-pad or analog. Not much difference in terms of location here. But to hit select or start if you're jumping into like an arcade game or whatnot, it's so much easier and more natural, in my opinion, to just go up from here rather than having to go down here and have to work around the analog sticks. So I love the fact that they just permanently relocated those up there and they've stuck to that layout. Now down here we have our dual analog sticks, both of which have the button function. If you hit that on both sides, you can hear the action on it. Love the Anbernic analog sticks though, really precise. And I'm actually going to jump into a racing game when we actually demo this because I love testing out controllers and handhelds with racing games. I just find that to be the best way to really test out the performance of an analog stick because you're using that to navigate, a speeding car in most cases. So it's just a really great way to test it out and to really get an idea of the sensitivity and performance of those analog sticks. But really, they feel quite nice here. I'm going to obviously be adjusting my collection here as I move that around, but feels really nice and controlled. So I'm really optimistic about how that's going to perform. Now, if we go up here to the top, you can see we have our L1, L2, R1, and R2 shoulder and trigger buttons up here, really nicely laid out. I like the way, again, this is how I'd typically be holding it. I like how everything lines up perfectly like this. I don't have to strain to hit anything. The trigger buttons are actually raised a little bit too, so you can see over here the profile of the shoulder button, and then the trigger button just comes up ever so slightly. I like that because it actually gives you the ability to feel rather than having to look for the difference in buttons because they are laid out right next to each other. There's only a slight gap there, but that just enables me to feel if I'm playing a game and I'm really into it and I'm not looking for exactly where one button ends and where one begins. I can just feel for it and just say, okay, here's the ridge. So now I'm right up onto that trigger button now. So I love that. So now over here we have our OTG, we have our headphone jack right there, and then here is a mini HD output. So we could take a mini HD to regular HDMI cable and plug this from our handheld directly into a TV or monitor and be able to play on screen. I love that. Love the fact that we can just incorporate that into this experience because a lot of handhelds don't have that capability. Here we have our USB DC, so this is going to be the port that you charge from, and I've actually charged this as soon as I got it. It charges extremely quickly and it does hold a charge for a long period of time. I have 65% charge on here right now. I had this plugged in for I think 25 minutes or so not long at all, and I was just totally dead. I had 1% when I powered this on, and instantly just shut it off and plugged it in. So the fact that we got more than halfway charged in just 25 minutes is pretty good. So that's pretty much it in terms of the front. Let's drop down to the bottom here. We have our micro SD card slot 1 and 2. First one's going to be your operating system. Second one is going to be whatever you add on here for games. So game collection card, in this case, my SD that I put together goes right here. And then we're just using the stock card that came with the device. Here we have our reset. Here we have our function. So to exit games, where most you're going to use a hotkey function. So you would hit, for example, start and select. In most cases with any type of emulation setup, you would hit both of those together to exit a game. In this case, you're going to hit start with your function down here to exit games. So I do like that. It is obviously awkward to stop what you're doing and hit both of these at the same time. You really need to have two hands, but you don't run the risk of hitting both of those buttons together and exiting a game when you don't mean to. So it to me makes sense that we would have it down here where it's harder to hit it by mistake. So over here on the left hand side is our power button right there. Not much to see there, but it is nice. It is recessed in too, so it's actually recessed in quite a bit, which I like. Reason I like that is because if you're over here, with some of them that would stand out a little bit, kind of like these buttons up here, or would be just slightly recessed in, you run the risk of hitting it just with your palm like that, and then shutting off the device while you're mid-game. With it being recessed in there so nicely, you don't run that risk at all. So we'll jump over to the other side now. Just volume control over here, up and down. That's how we adjust the volume. Pretty straightforward. And then we have our speakers down here on each side at the bottom. So that's pretty much it in terms of the layout here. Let's jump into some games and test this out. So I want to jump into a racing game, as I mentioned already. What collection should we go into? So PlayStation typically runs really well. I do want to check that out, but I want to jump into N64 first, because I want to just put this to the test right out of the gate. N64 can be hit or miss on handhelds like this. So I want to jump into, oh, look at that, I'm right where I want to be. I want to go into Cruisin' World. I'm really familiar with this game, and I'm really familiar with how it performs on most of the emulation handhelds out there. So I can add some volume to this and just jump into the game real quick. Alright, we're just jumping into the first race that pops up on here. And I'm looking for lags. Alright, so really smooth here. Alright, so to exit this game, function and start. That's going to act as our hotkey. We'll get the Anbernic logo, and it should bring us back out to our collection. Alright. Alright, so I wanted to, first off, lower the volume there, but I want to talk about that game. The reason why, you can see I'm actually pretty decent at the game in the end. I was hitting a lot of obstacles and doing some crazy maneuvering because I wanted to get a lot of movement on the screen, because I wanted to test out exactly how this handheld is able to emulate this particular title, because this is a tough title to emulate on a handheld especially. So it seems that when we're just kind of cruising, no pun intended there, but just cruising and not dealing with obstacles or crashes or anything like that, it performs pretty smoothly. As soon as we start doing some wild jumps and having a lot of action on screen, we do see a little bit of a lag there. So I think this can be improved with just adjusting some things in the settings, maybe changing the frame rate. But all in all, that's actually a pretty positive experience. I've tried this game on a lot of handhelds, and they don't perform as well as it does on this one in most cases. So it definitely seems that this is more powerful than some of the previous Anbernic handhelds out there. But definitely wanted to test that out because I am so familiar with how that game performs generally. So definitely think we can go into and adjust frame rates and stuff like that to better the performance. But all in all, pretty decent there. You can see that the audio does have, minor lags there. And again, I think that starts to get a little wonky when you start picking up the activity on screen there. So when you start hitting things or going off jumps kind of crazy, you're getting a lot more movement on screen. So all in all, pretty positive experience there. Let's jump out and let's jump into another racing game. So let's go over to PlayStation. I want to test out, maybe we'll go into Crash Team Racing. So we should be, Crash Team Racing right here. I'll jump ahead a little bit because this has a long lead in as the game actually loads up, and we'll up the volume on this one too. All right, so I jumped into Adventure by mistake, but I think if we stop right here, we'll jump into a race. I meant to just go into the races that you can actually select, but should be able to get in this way. It's been a while since I played this way, but not seeing any lags or anything, so this looks pretty good so far. Yeah, real smooth so far. I don't remember what all of the controls do, so that one's to look back. Not sure if that one's a trick one. Is it this one? What do we use to use it? That adjusts our view. It must be one of these. Oh, there we go. Let's go up here. Oh, missed it. Get the boost. Ooh. Paying too much attention to the buttons here. So that's the brake. There we go. Alright, so A is our button to launch those power-ups. We could change that in mapping if we wanted to. I probably would. I'm not crazy about having to kind of hit it like that. It's really awkward. But you could just remap that. That's not a problem at all. So we can maintain this first place. I think the end is right around this corner, if I'm not mistaken. Alright, so first place, not bad. No issues whatsoever, no lags, nothing awkward about this, no audio cutouts or anything. And I think that's mainly because PlayStation is just not as demanding of a collection for emulation to jump into, and 64 is definitely much harder. So start and function at the bottom is going to take us back as our hotkey to our menu. So these are the more demanding collections, and I guess we should jump into one more. Let's go find some Dreamcast to jump into, because Dreamcast is another one of those collections that is a little bit demanding in some cases. So where is Dreamcast? There we go. So let's find what is a good one to jump into. Soul Calibur can have some issues sometimes. So yeah, we'll go into Soul Calibur. Alright, so I just picked a random character to jump into. Actually, I'm usually Maxi. So let's see how we do here. We're looking for lags or screen tearing or anything like that. Almost fell in there. So I'm not seeing any issues here, no lags or screen tearing. There's a lot of flickering with this particular game on some handhelds. We're not seeing that here, so really a great experience so far. All right, a weak performance, but game looks great. Weak performance on my part, I should say. Game looks great, though. No issues whatsoever. All right, guys, you can see from this review, I kind of reviewed it as I played some of those games there, but in terms of the layout of controls, love everything about this. It's very straightforward, very similar to that of what Anbernic's done in the past, but definitely some minor improvements there. I really like the analog sticks on here. I like the ones in the last couple products that Anbernic put out, but this one definitely seems to be a little bit tighter. I think they're using pretty much the same external, analog sticks here, or external components to the analog sticks, but definitely feels like tighter controls. So maybe they've made some adjustments inside. I really can't say, or maybe it's just the fact that this really isn't broken in yet, but performance on those seems perfect. Buttons are great. What I really like about the shoulder buttons and trigger buttons, though, is they're laid out very similar in terms of location, but I do like that slight little ridge that we see here, as I mentioned when we were going through the initial tour of the controls. I love just the fact that it's so minor. You can see again right there that it does stick out for those trigger buttons a little bit more than the shoulder button does. And it just feels great because you can be playing a game and not have to look up. You could just feel for where the shoulder button changes into the trigger button. You don't have to look for it. It's just really nice to have that feel that is so distinguished. So that's pretty much it in terms of the layout here. Another slight thing, if you look at it here, you can see we have these little bulges out right here, which just gives you a little something to grab onto, and it's also a different texture. So you can see it's a non-skid texture here. Feels great. Just sits in the hands really nicely. It's really safe and secure. So it is a great feature on here as well. In terms of the size, I love the 5-inch screen. I think it's really great. It looks great for all the games too. I like how everything widens out and uses every bit of it. We don't have like a thick bezel on here for the most part, most of our games anyways. And it just fills in really nicely. So love that about this. Now, in terms of the feel to the material used on this, it doesn't feel like as durable of a material as that of the RG552 from Anbernic. It feels a little bit cheaper, but it's definitely a lot lighter than that particular handheld, the 552. So, I really can't say whether, it's going to be more durable or less durable, or if it's going to hold up over time. I guess I could bounce it off the floor, but I'm not looking to do that. Not really how I want to find out if this is going to last or not. But, it could potentially be a little bit less, durable than the 552, just going off of the weight and appearance of it. But that's really the only thing that I would point out that, could be a downside to this. In terms of the performance on here, I definitely see the step up in performance from the previous Anbernic handhelds. We jumped into first Cruisin' World, and it was a little laggy in spots, and I kind of talked about that as I was playing the game and as I was jumping into the next game. The reason I chose that game, again, if you skipped over that portion of the video, the reason I chose that game is because it is a really tough game to emulate, especially on handhelds. A lot going on, a lot of movement, a lot just happening on screen, and that's why I was kind of trying to bounce off of cars and do some weird jumps and stuff, because the more activity you have on screen, that's usually where you're going to see the shortcomings in emulation. In this case, there were some minor lags. I think we could fix that with some frame rate adjustments in the settings, but all in all, the game does play. It's certainly playable. If you're really picky and you want that 100% speed, you may run into some slight issues there, but really, all in all, compared to how that game plays on all the other handhelds out there, the performance is pretty good. Now, we jumped into Crash Team Racing, and the performance there was top-notch, 100%. We also jumped into Dreamcast, and we jumped into Soul Calibur. Soul Calibur usually has, I would say that the speed is usually pretty much on point, but there's a lot of screen tearing and flickering and stuff like that, especially when you're dealing with fights with, obviously a lot of movement. You have two characters on screen dueling and fighting with each other, so there's just a lot of different movement, very similar to that of Cruising World. So with that particular title, no issues whatsoever. I didn't see any lags or delays. I didn't see any screen tearing, any audio cutouts or anything like that. So Dreamcast and the titles that I actually put together on my build here, everything that I've tested out so far runs 100% perfect. Now, that's not to say that there's not going to be some other titles that are more challenging, later releases for Dreamcast, that may run into slight issues here, but all in all, the performance across the board, in my experience so far with the Anbernic RG503, is top-notch, and I would definitely recommend this handheld. I love the feel of it, love the look of it, and I obviously love the performance of it. So if you're interested in getting some additional information on this particular handheld, jump down to the description of this video. I'll put a direct link in there where you can actually buy this if you're interested, or just check out the specs on it. So just to make it easier for you, drop down, hit that link. That's going to do it for today, though. If you guys have any questions, comments, anything like that, hit me up in the comment section below. Always happy to help you guys out however I can, whenever I can. But thumbs up on the video if you enjoyed this and you found this information helpful. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. I'm going to be doing a lot more videos on the Anbernic RG503, some demos, testing out more games, a tour of the build that I actually put together for this handheld that I was using in the video here to show you guys around all this, because this doesn't come with games ready to go on it. It comes with absolutely nothing in terms of games, so you have to put all those on yourself, and it can be a bit of a challenge to get everything up and running on here. So I have a video where I'll just show you guys around the build that I put together for this, so if you want to see that, best way again to stay in the loop is to hit that subscribe button. But that's going to do it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, supporting me here on the Retro Gaming Guy YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys real soon.